There's a way to quiet the relentless noise in your head in just 5 seconds. No complicated techniques, no years of meditation, no mental gymnastics. Eckhart Tolle discovered this during an overwhelming anxiety attack. A moment so intense he thought he'd lose his mind. And what he did in those 5 seconds transformed not just that moment, but his entire life. Most people try to still their minds using more mental effort. They struggle not to think. They fight their thoughts. They try to force silence, but that's like trying to douse flames with petrol. The more you fight your mental chatter, the more active it becomes. Tolle discovered something revolutionary. You don't need to stop your mind. You need to stop feeding it with your attention. It's like a bonfire without fuel. It simply dies down on its own. And the fuel of the mind is your identification with your thoughts. Do you know that feeling of 1,000 thoughts swirling at once? Like a radio blasting at full volume inside your head, running commentary, judgments, future anxieties, past regrets. And the more you try to silence that radio, the louder it seems to play. But what if I told you you have a mental off switch? That there's a button that instantly turns off all the internal noise. And that this button isn't some complicated technique, but something so simple a child could do it. Steve Jobs knew this secret. That's why he could maintain complete clarity even under immense pressure. Oprah Winfrey has used this technique for decades. Albert Einstein accessed this state naturally when his greatest discoveries emerged. And now, you are about to discover exactly how to do it. The secret isn't in controlling the mind, it's in recognizing that you are not the mind. And this simple perception changes everything instantly. But before I teach you the exact 5-second technique, I need to show you why all other approaches fail. Because understanding what doesn't work will make you appreciate the simplicity of what truly works. The first approach that fails is trying to not think. This is impossible, because the mind thinks naturally, like your heart beats, or your lungs breathe. Trying to stop your thoughts is like trying to stop the wind from blowing. You'll only tire yourself out and become frustrated. The second approach that fails is trying to replace negative thought patterns with positive affirmations. This keeps you trapped at the level of mental content. You remain identified. With thoughts, you just try to choose which thoughts to have, but any thought can become obsessive if you identify with it. The third approach that fails is using complex breathing exercises, visualization, or mantras. These techniques may temporarily calm you, but they're still operating at the level of the mind. You're using mind to control mind, which may work for moments, but doesn't touch the root of the problem. Tolle discovered that all these approaches make the same fundamental mistake. They assume that you are your mind trying to control itself, but you are not your mind. You are the awareness of the mind. And when you recognize this clearly, the mind automatically loses its power to dominate you. It's like discovering that you're not the actor in the movie, but the observer watching the movie. The actor might be in total drama, but the observer remains calm and free. This misidentification creates all suffering. But here's what's even more incredible. When you stop identifying with your mind, it doesn't disappear. It simply returns to its natural function, being a useful tool instead of a tyrannical dictator, like a well-trained companion walking beside you instead of dragging you by the leash. Steve Jobs understood this intuitively. He used his mind when he needed to solve problems, create products, communicate ideas, but he didn't live identified with it. That's why he could access insights that came from beyond logical thought. The 5-second technique I'm about to teach you is based on this fundamental understanding. It's not a technique to control the mind. It's an instantaneous recognition of your true identity as free consciousness. But there's something specific about the 5 seconds that makes all the difference. It's not too long for the mind to create resistance. It's not too short to create real change. It's exactly the time needed to make the transition from mental identification to conscious freedom. And here's what will surprise you. You've already done this thousands of times in your life without realizing it. Whenever you paused in the middle of a worry and suddenly felt present, whenever you were lost in thought and something brought your attention to the moment, whenever you felt peace arise naturally for no apparent reason, these were moments when your attention disidentified from the mind and returned to your essential nature. The technique I'm going to teach you simply makes this conscious and reproducible. But before revealing the technique, I need to prepare you for what's going to happen. Because the first few seconds of freedom from the mind can be so unusual that some people get scared. When your mind stops for the first time, there might be a moment of disorientation. You're so used to the constant mental noise that silence might seem strange initially. It's like leaving a noisy party for a silent night. It takes a few seconds to adjust. Some people feel fear because they think, if I'm not thinking, who am I? But this fear comes from the mind itself, trying to regain control. In reality, when thoughts temporarily stop, you discover who you really are beneath all that mental activity. Others feel such profound peace that they become emotional. After years of carrying the weight of compulsive thoughts, the relief can be intense. It's like taking off an incredibly heavy backpack you didn't even realize you were carrying. But the most common experience is a surprising simplicity. You realize that you've always been okay beneath all the mental drama, that your essential nature is naturally peaceful, present, free, that you don't need special circumstances to feel good. Tolle describes this experience as coming home, not to a physical place, but to your natural state of being, like a wave realizing it has always been the ocean, only temporarily forgotten of its true nature. Now, the exact 5-second technique. Second 1, 2, the recognition. The moment you notice your mind is agitated, overwhelmed, anxious, self-critical, ruminating, ask a simple question. Who is aware of these thoughts? Don't look for an intellectual answer. Just ask the question and feel where it points. It points to you, not the personal you with a history and problems, but the you that is aware of all of it. Second 3, 4, the separation. Now, recognize clearly, I am not these thoughts, I am the one who observes them. Feel the difference between the mental chatter passing through and the awareness that is aware of that chatter. It's as if you were the sky and thoughts were clouds passing by. The sky is unaffected by the clouds. It remains vast, free, unchanged, regardless of what passes through it. Second 5, the rest. Simply rest in that identity as observing awareness. Don't try to maintain this state. Don't strive for it to last longer. Just be what you always have been, conscious presence. At this moment, you may notice that thoughts are still there, but they no longer dominate you. They've become like background noise that you can choose to listen to or not. You've regained your power of choice. That's it. 5 seconds. There's nothing more to do, learn, or achieve. You simply recognize your true identity, and the mind automatically returns to its proper place, as a servant, not as a master. But there's something important that needs to be understood about the practice. The technique isn't to be used once and done. It's to be applied whenever you notice you've gotten lost in compulsive mental activity, like washing your hands. You don't do it once in your life. You do it whenever necessary. In the beginning, you may need to use the technique dozens of times a day. Your mind is conditioned to be dominant, so it will try to regain control frequently. But each time you use the technique, you strengthen your ability to remain free. It's like exercising a muscle. In the beginning, you tire quickly, but with regular practice, you develop strength and endurance, eventually remaining disidentified. From the mind becomes natural and effortless. Oprah Winfrey recounts that in the first few months of practicing something similar, she used a variation of this technique hundreds of times a day. Who is worried? Who is judging? Who is afraid? And gradually, her default identification shifted from problematic persona to free awareness. Jim Carrey had an even more radical experience. He became obsessed with the question, who is Jim Carrey? And discovered he couldn't find this person he thought he was. There was only consciousness playing at being Jim Carrey. The beauty of the technique is that it works in any situation. In traffic when you're impatient, at work when you're stressed, at home when you're worried, in relationships when you're reactive. The question, who is aware of this, always brings you back to freedom. But there are some variations of the technique that can be helpful in specific situations. If you're anxious about the future, ask, who is projecting this future? This shows you that problematic futures exist only as present mental activity. The real future, when it arrives, will always be now. If you're ruminating on the past, ask, who is reliving this memory? This reveals that the past only exists as thought happening now. You free yourself from the prison of events that are already over. If you're judging someone, ask, who is making this judgment? This shows you that judgments are mental activity, not absolute truth. And when you don't identify with judgments, relationships transform. If you're comparing yourself to others, ask, who is comparing? This reveals that comparison is just mind creating suffering where there's no need. Your essential nature cannot be compared because it is unique. The technique is universal because it doesn't work with specific content, anxiety, anger, sadness, fear. It works with the fundamental mechanism that creates all psychological suffering, identification with mental activity. When you master this technique, something extraordinary happens. You develop what Tolle calls psychological immunity. You can be in chaotic situations, with difficult people, facing real challenges, but maintain your inner peace intact. Not because you become insensitive or disconnected, but because you stop creating additional suffering through mental resistance to what is already happening. You respond from clarity instead of reacting from drama. But there's an even deeper aspect of the technique that few understand. The deepest aspect of the technique is that it doesn't just stop the mind. It reveals who you truly are. And this revelation completely transforms how you function in the world. When you ask, who is aware of these thoughts, and truly investigate, you make a surprising discovery. You can't find this who. There is only pure awareness being aware. There is no separate person observing. There is only observation happening. It's like trying to find the observer of a dream. During the dream, there seems to be you seeing things in the dream. But when you wake up, you realize there was only consciousness dreaming. There was no separate observer from the observed. Einstein intuited this when he said, a human being is part of a whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. The 5-second technique dissolves this illusion instantly. When you recognize that there is no separate observer, only observation, something revolutionary happens. You stop seeing yourself as an isolated person facing a potentially hostile world. You recognize yourself as unified consciousness, temporarily experiencing an individual form. This perception changes everything. Your relationships transform because you're no longer trying to protect a separate self. Your work becomes creative expression because you're no longer struggling to survive. Your problems become opportunities because you're no longer resisting life. Steve Jobs accessed this understanding naturally. That's why he could say, connect the dots. He saw patterns and connections that others didn't see because he wasn't trapped in the limited perspective of a separate ego. He functioned from a broader, more unified vision. But there's a specific precision to the technique that maximizes its effectiveness, and small adjustments make the difference between a superficial experience and a profound transformation. The precision of the question. The question isn't "who am I?" because that can lead to mental speculation. It's not "where are my thoughts?" because that can become an intellectual exercise. The exact question is, who is aware of these thoughts? Because it points directly to the living experience of awareness. When you ask this question, don't analyze the answer. Feel where it points. It's like when someone points to the moon. You don't study the finger. You look where it's pointing. The question is the finger. Pure awareness is the moon. The quality of attention. The attention you use to ask the question is crucial. It's not intellectual attention trying to solve a mental puzzle. It's sensory attention, like when you hear a faint sound in the distance. You become very quiet and receptive. It's the same quality of attention you use when you watch a sunset or listen to music that deeply moves you. A gentle, open, effortless attention. This quality of attention is itself a form of meditation. The perfect timing. The technique is most effective when applied at the first sign of mental agitation, not after you're already completely lost in mental dramas. It's like extinguishing a candle versus putting out a fire. The sooner you intervene, the easier it is. Develop a sensitivity to recognize the first signs, a subtle tension in your chest, an almost imperceptible acceleration of thoughts, a shift in the quality of your presence. The sooner you apply the technique, the more effective it will be. The layers of resistance. Your mind will develop sophisticated strategies to resist the technique. Knowing these strategies beforehand helps you avoid falling into them. Intellectual resistance. This is too simple to work. Real problems need real solutions. This is escapism. When this happens, ask, who is resisting intellectually? Emotional resistance. This isn't working. I feel worse. Maybe I'm a special case. Ask, who is resisting emotionally? Practical resistance. I don't have time for this. It's hard to remember to use. I need to solve urgent things first. Ask, who is creating urgency? Eckhart Tolle discovered that the resistance itself is perfect material for the technique. Anything that appears in consciousness, including resistance to the technique, can be observed with the liberating question. The neurological effects. Fascinating research reveals what happens in the brain when you use this technique consistently. Dr. Judson Brewer of Harvard discovered that the default mode network, the area of the brain associated with the ego and compulsive mental activity, calms down dramatically. Simultaneously, areas associated with presence, compassion, and wisdom become activated. It's as if you're literally reshaping your brain to function from a higher state of consciousness. After a few weeks of practice, you may notice physical changes, deeper sleep, better digestion, a stronger immune system. This happens because you stop living in a chronic state of mental stress and allow your body to function naturally. Specific applications. The technique can be adapted to specific situations with minor modifications that enhance its effectiveness. During conflicts. When someone criticizes or attacks you, before reacting, silently ask, who is being attacked? You'll discover that attacks only affect imaginary identities, not your true essence. In important decisions. When you're confused about which choice to make, after considering the options logically, ask, who is deciding? and rest in the clarity that emerges beyond mental confusion. During physical pain, when there's discomfort in the body, ask, who is feeling pain? This doesn't eliminate the sensation, but it changes your relationship with it. You can feel pain without suffering psychologically. In moments of boredom, when you feel bored or empty, ask, who is bored? Frequently you'll discover that beneath boredom there's a natural fullness that doesn't need external entertainment. Oprah Winfrey uses a powerful variation during interviews. When she feels she's trying to impress or control the conversation, she internally asks, who is trying to impress? This reconnects her with authentic presence, allowing for much deeper conversations. The natural expansion. After practicing the technique for a few weeks, something beautiful happens naturally. You no longer need to consciously ask the question. Your default identification automatically shifts. Instead of automatically identifying with thoughts and emotions, you naturally rest in the awareness that observes them. It's like changing your favorite radio station. Your automatic tuning changes. You develop what mystics call the impartial witness, a part of you that observes everything with equanimity. Drama may be happening on the surface of your experience, but you remain centered in the depth. Relationships transform because you're no longer projecting your neurotic needs onto other people. You can love without attachment, give without expectation, be present without an agenda. Work becomes more fluid because you access creativity and intelligence that come from beyond the calculating mind. Solutions appear spontaneously when you stop forcing and allow natural wisdom to function. Problems become opportunities for growth because you're no longer resisting circumstances. You dance with life instead of fighting against it. The transpersonal dimension. At the deepest level, the technique reveals something that goes beyond personal improvement. It shows that the consciousness you are is the same consciousness, that everyone is. Separation is merely an illusion of perspective. When you ask who is aware and truly investigate, you may discover that there are no clear boundaries between your consciousness and universal consciousness. It's like waves in the ocean realizing they are made of the same water. This perception develops natural compassion. How can you hate others when you recognize that their consciousness is essentially the same as yours? How can you feel alone when you realize you're part of the fabric of existence? Albert Einstein arrived at this understanding through physics. We are not merely passive observers of the universe, we are participants in it. The 5-second technique offers direct experiential access to this truth. Continuous refinement. Even after mastering the basic technique, there are increasingly subtle layers to explore. It's like learning to play the piano. You can learn the basic notes quickly, but the refinement of expression continues throughout life. You may begin to notice that different types of thoughts require slightly different qualities of observation. Anxious thoughts dissolve with gentle observation. Angry thoughts transform with firm but compassionate observation. You may discover that the question itself isn't necessary. Just the movement of attention from identification to observation is sufficient. Like an experienced musician who no longer needs to read sheet music, eventually you may realize that even observation is unnecessary. There is just life living itself through the form that you are. There is no observer, no observed, only experience experiencing itself. The promise kept. The initial promise was to still your mental chatter in 5 seconds, effortlessly. But what you discovered is far more valuable than temporary mental silence. You discovered your fundamental freedom from the prison of mental identification. You can allow thoughts to come and go without becoming them. You can feel emotions fully without being overwhelmed by them. You can face real challenges without creating additional psychological drama. Most importantly, you discovered that you were already free. The technique didn't create freedom. It removed the obstacles preventing you from recognizing the freedom that was always your nature. Eckhart Tolle teaches that the greatest miracle isn't stopping your mind, but recognizing that you were never limited by it. You've always been the infinite space where all experience appears and disappears. So the next time your mental chatter is racing, remember, you have the power to free yourself in 5 seconds, not through control or effort, but through the simple recognition of who you truly are. The question is available. Who is aware of these thoughts? Freedom is guaranteed. You are. Pure consciousness temporarily forgetting itself. Coming home to yourself is always 5 seconds away. Use this technique. Share this freedom. Because a more conscious world is born through individuals who have discovered how to stop being slaves to their own minds. Your mental chatter might be turbulent, but you have always been free. 5 seconds to remember. A lifetime to live from that remembrance.